Everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the Corporate Parenting Board. The first order of business today will be to nominate a chair. If I could welcome nominations now from board members. Councillor Ellison.
Good morning. I'd like to nominate Councillor Patterson as chair for today's meeting.
Thank you, and could I request someone to second that, please? Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, that's me. I'd like to second that, please.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, you have been nominated as chair. If you would like to open the meeting, please.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Jodie. So as Jodie says, welcome everybody to this Corporate Parenting Board on the 11th of January, and Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for nominating me as chair. Unfortunately, Councillor Kendrick isn't well, so is unable to attend this meeting this morning. But I hope I'll try and stand in her shoes. I won't say admirably, adequately. Okay, so membership of the board. Now we have got a new member who I don't think they're actually here at the moment. Farah Munir, who is a care leaver who is joining us on the board. So I don't know if they'll be able to attend a bit later, if they're a bit late, but we do welcome her to the board. Apologies, we have actually got apologies from Keely Lucas, who is our other care leaver. They're unable to make it today. Obviously, we've got Councillor Kendrick's apologies. Any other? I believe we've also got Joanne Sanders' apologies. Any other apologies that we need to hear of at the moment?
Yes, Councillor Patterson. Apologies have also been received from Christine Carmichael, Jill Adey, and Anna Gladhill. Okay,
thank you for that, Jodie. Okay, so that's the membership of the board this morning. And can we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting? Are people happy with those minutes? Can we approve them? I can see a few nods. So thank you for that. We've assumed then that we're approving those minutes of the previous meeting that was held on the 23rd of November. Are there any interests that any member has to declare? No, thank you very much. Admission of the public. Well, this is a public meeting. Have we any deputations or petitions, Jodie?
None received, thank you.
Thank you. And similarly, have we got any questions to hear in public question time?
No, none received, thank you, Chair.
Right, okay. Right, well, the other apology I suppose that we have got is unfortunately Mr. Sykes, who was come to speak to us from on behalf of the Samantha Sykes Foundation Trust, is unable to make this meeting this morning. So the next item, number 7, an update on the Samantha Sykes Foundation Trust, can't be heard, I'm afraid. I don't know if this will come back to a future meeting or if we'll have to wait and receive a written update at all. Have you any ideas about that, Jodie?
Yeah, there's been a request to provide a written update to the next meeting of the board, which will just need to go through the board and the chair of the board for approval. Okay,
thanks very much. Right, well, now on to the children performance highlights report. And can I ask Ophelia Ricks if she would present that? Well, the part of that anyway for us, or start off presenting that to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm Ophelia Ricks, Head of Corporate Parenting and Responsibility for Looked After Children and Care Leavers. So just in relation to the numbers of looked after children in terms of the data, we currently, as of November, have 119 children looked after. Within that, the highest number of children in terms of ethnicity is white British, and that's 71.9%. And then the breakdown of the sort of the other groups is highlighted and reflected in the report. You'll also see from the presenting data that our highest number in relation to age is between 10 and 15. And of those, we have 149 that are males, and then we have 116 who are females. So we've got quite a high number between the ages of 10 and 15. Well, what we've been doing is quite a lot of work to look at how do we successfully look at children being reunited back at home and or securing permanence. So we have a weekly permanence planning meetings to look at children. Can children be back at home with connected families? Because that's really important, that we need to keep children and young people within the communities, within the families, where it's safe to do so, again, because I think that's the important thing. So as part of our scrutiny and oversight, we have the weekly permanence panels that looks at permanence, that considers can we reunite children back at home? Because you'll see there's been a number of children who where they've had a number of placement moves, so they've moved, and where we've as part of that, where we've been successfully being able to reunite children back at home. So you'll see from the data there is an increase in the placement with parents, but that's as a result of children going back home basically from foster care. So that's been really important, and we've been able to wrap around really support the families within the communities. We've engaged and we continue to successfully engage and work with the family group conferencing as well, because that's really important. So it's not just looking at the family itself. We've got the family group conferencing service to support the family to come up with good, safe plans. We, in terms of from a service leadership perspective, I ensure that I'm looking at the data on a twice weekly basis to ensure the quality, but the timeliness of visits. And you'll see from the data that we continue to see children in a timely manner. We do still have some challenges in relation to the timeliness of recording, but that's work that I continue to engage with and work with the team in ensuring that we do that timely. In relation to our care leavers, we're doing some work in relation to how we present the data, because a number of our care leavers either have an allocated social worker and or an allocated personal advisor. So we're just doing some work around how we present that data, because again, I've interrogated all the data and I'm assured that all young people are being seen either by their personal advisor or their social worker. One of the things that I did want to highlight was about the ongoing increase each year of special guardianship orders. And I've done some work to look at the numbers, so within the region, and we've identified that Kirklees have got the highest number of special guardianships, and we continue to promote and support the applications for special guardianships. And again, and just to note that families are not disadvantaged by having children remaining with either connected carer or friends, because we offer both financial support and emotional support to the families to ensure that children successfully remain within their connected family. So that's all I want to say really in terms of the highlights, and then just to note that the next corporate parenting board will be a focus on our care experienced young people, and just to give an overview of the work that we're doing to both strengthen but support the ongoing development of work with our care experienced young people. So that's all I wanted to say today, and just to open any questions.
Anybody got any questions for Ophelia? Barry?
Yeah, just the one. I can see that there's 75 children outside within 20 miles of Kirklees. And I've got the figures here, fostering 63. So I have 63 children with IFAs or with LA fosterers.
Are you asking, are they with or?
Are they with IFAs or were
Yeah,
they with local?
Yes.
Are they with IFAs?
With IFAs, yes.
Right. No, that's fine. Is there a reason why they've been placed 20 miles outside? Is it the lack of foster carers, or is it?
It's the availability of foster placements.
Right. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Helene, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the figures as well, and I've noticed obviously increases for stability placements. Is there any way we can narrative that out, the ones that have actually gone back home, so that, because obviously that looks quite high, as 49, and that's just with 3 placement moves. Obviously there's some with 2 and another placement move as well in that one, and also the amount of social worker changes as well. But again, that's only with children that's been in care for 12 months over. It just seems that the figures are going up and up and up, and I just wondered, if there's a reason for that. Is it sickness? Is it placement breakdowns? Is it the children that's coming in that I've got extra needs to what we normally have in the past?
So I think there's 2 questions there, isn't there, in relation to, so the first, I respond to the first one in relation to, so in terms of the number of social work moves, there will naturally, because our young people are overseen within our assessment intervention team, and then they will have a move. Then, so there will be a change in social worker. So you'll always naturally see one change in social worker. But from my perspective, there's a lot of work that is done around before a child's moved to a new social worker. They do joint visits. It's building those relationships, so it minimises that change, and it's making sure that remains the quality in terms of the relationships. We have had some sickness as well that's had an impact on that, and again, it's making sure that children are not left and where they're not seen. So we've had to look at, and we've had some staff that have left to be near a home. So again, in relation to that, so that's had an impact on the changing social work, but I have that oversight in relation to looking at that and looking at the impact and making sure that that we have least impact in relation in terms of those relationships. Sorry, Elaine, that you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add, obviously, the current situation, the pandemic has had an impact around that. The other thing that I'm seeing as well when I'm looking, because I am often looking at cases for children, is where we're dually allocating. So we're allocating more than one social worker, so that actually we can preempt. So if the social worker is off because of sickness, absence, there's a social worker that's familiar to the child or young person that can step in, so they'll share work in some situations. I would suggest on the changes probably around our older young people that are not as settled, and sometimes we change social works at their request. Not, we do a lot of work around that, but there is something about that social work relationship as well. And then there'll be the change to the PA. So there's a number of factors to take into account. But I would say the last 18 months to 2 years, because we had made great strides in that stability of social worker, but the change over the last 2 years with absences that are related to COVID has had an impact.
Right, okay. Is this for children just under the age of 18, or does it qualify for staying put placements as well with peers?
It's under 18.
Under 18s?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to Ophelia? I mean, Ian Mottershaw isn't here. I didn't know if you wanted to pick up anything on missing, Ophelia or Tom. No? Okay, shall we move on then to Janet and looked after children educational outcomes?
Good morning, everybody. Janet Tolley, head of the virtual school. I'd just like to take you through some key headlines, really. So the virtual school continues to work with all young people, actually from the age of 3 to 18 and 18 plus with some consent. With all of those young people, we have been working with other professionals to ensure that every young person has at least one termly PEP, personal education planning meeting, where all the professionals around that young person work together to look at the current situation. This has obviously been extremely important over the last 18 months, where some young people have been missing school, missing education, and ensuring that we work together and then fund through the pupil premium any additional support that that young person might need to accelerate their progress. And currently, we're meeting 100% in terms of timescales for those and for initial PEPs when young people come into care. In terms of school moves, we've talked a little bit there about changes of social worker. We talk a little bit about changes of school. Where those have happened, they've happened in a very timely manner. There's only one situation so far since September where that's gone outside of timescale, and that was around ensuring an appropriate curriculum and education placement for one of our unaccompanied asylum seekers. If you look at the data on the bottom of page 20, you'll see that there does seem to be a large discrepancy around the PA statistics, the persistent absence statistics, for young people with less than 90% attendance. Just to remind you that the benchmarking figures there are for 2018-19, so pre-pandemic. There aren't any national benchmarking publications at the moment for us to use, but just understanding that there are issues, or there have been issues around school closures, around young people who are poorly with COVID, and also the impact for some of our young people of returning back into education following the pandemic. Just to assure you that we're working with social workers, designated teachers and parents and carers, where we have concerns around a young person's attendance or engagement in education, we're all working very closely together to re-engage and support them back into education, and we have clear oversight of that. It's not reported in here, but we are also very conscious of impact on nationally on exclusions and suspensions from schools for young people. So we're working as proactively as we can whenever schools have any issues or concerns to work with us early to try and put in again any additional support and preventative work for our young people to ensure that they remain in education. We are conscious that, you know, Omicron is raising. There's a surge with Omicron around staff absences, and there may be occasions where schools are unable to deliver education to all young people. Our young people in care are vulnerable learners, and in the government guidance should be offered full-time education. So also our role is to challenge where that's not the case and to support in exceptional circumstances if a young person has to be educated in the short term at home. So yeah, throughout the pandemic, we've continued operating virtually an efficient and effective service and continue to do so now. Any questions? Everybody's very
John
quiet
Dawson.
this morning.
Yeah.
John.
No, John's got his hand up.
Thanks for that, Janet. Yeah, it's a comment rather than a question, really, and it's just to say a comment on benchmarking and that lack of benchmarking we have at the moment nationally and locally, just due to the COVID situation, is a real curveball, and it seems to me as though whatever figures we get here today are going to be tested kind of later on in 6 months, a year's time, So this really needs to be treated as and it's very difficult to draw out any kind of interrogation of the data here. And I think it's just made that comment that it needs to be sensitive. You mentioned the surge in Omicron. I don't think we've seen the peak of it yet. That possibly in the next fortnight or so. So yeah, this is I view this as a watch and see kind of situation. I don't know whether you agree.
Absolutely agree. It's also the same, Councillor Lawson, in terms of attainment and progress information for our young people in care for the last 2 years. You know, I can report we have a very detailed knowledge. We have a very timely, up-to-date picture of where young people are, but we don't have those national comparators. They don't exist. And I think that we will be seeing the impact of the pandemic on our young people for a long time to come. I think we expected maybe to have more issues as we came out of the first lockdowns than we did have in terms of supporting our young people. But actually, I think as this has continued over a long period of time, it's something that's going to be part of our work ongoing. One of the things that we are able to do, because we were able to move to this virtual way of working, is we are able to be involved for all young people all the time. When the team were driving around to face-to-face meetings, you know, there were some advantages to that, but actually we couldn't get to every conversation about every young person in the way that we can do now. So we are able to support and challenge more appropriately for all of our young people than we were previously. So we do have eyes on every young person as an achievement coordinator who works really, really closely with the social worker. Yeah, and I think we've got a really good model of support for our young people as best as we can have in these exceptional circumstances.
Thank you.
Yeah, this term I think is going to be illuminating in terms of progress, not just to look after children, but all children in school, I think.
And we've been having conversations just yesterday, Councillor Patterson, with the leadership team in the virtual school around, you know, this way of working where most schools are meant to be open and most of our young people are meant to be there, but it's going to be very fluid, I think, dependent on staffing and ability to deliver. And I was saying to the team, it's not just for this term. You know, they're talking about there being COVID variants around for 6-7 years. So we need to have systems and processes where all professionals are able to be as up to date in real time as possible as to what's happening with every individual young person in care. And of course, moving forward, every other young person with a social worker or who is vulnerable in any way.
And in that sense, the virtual school in this virtual world has got a little bit of a head start there, haven't you? And as you say, you've benefited from the fact that you've been able to get to meetings about children which you wouldn't have otherwise necessarily have met. Any other questions? Anything else on the report as a whole that anybody wants to raise? Tom.
Councillor Patterson, yeah, just in terms of Jill Addy's absence today, I just wanted to briefly draw members' view to the looked after children health section, if that's okay. So just to say, if you look at the main points, that dental checks within the last 12 months for our looked after children have gone up to 61.9%, which is really positive. If you look at our statistical neighbours and the England average, that's around 40%. So we're moving forward with that. In terms of the initial health assessments that are completed for our looked after children when they come into care, again, the performance remains high, 86%. The same for our annual health assessments for under fives and over fives remains high as well. So I think overall the direction of travel in terms of the looked after children's health provision is going in the direction that we wanted it to. I think we've got to keep a close eye on the pandemic and how that's affecting staffing and any redeployment of health staff that's required. but nothing's been brought to my attention as it stands. But I'll work closely with Stuart Horn and Jill Addy to make sure that we're cited on any changes that may come. So that's all I wanted to say, really. Any questions and comments, welcome.
Colleen has a question.
Yeah, just more of a comment, really. As we know previously, sometimes the data doesn't always reflect what's actually happening. And I can honestly say that Jill sometimes cannot get the information quickly enough because it's not shared in a central database. It relies on people telling people and updating the system. And I think if we could get more data that's easily inputted and accessed, then I think those figures would actually be a lot higher. I know Jill works really hard, and the figures don't always reflect on the true figures, like the dentist. I know sometimes if you don't tell a social worker for 6 weeks that you haven't seen them, that the children, then it might be that they've missed, but they haven't missed. It's just that it's not on the system because the social worker's not passed it on, and then Jill will email you, and you've got to do all these emailing. So I think it's more of a data input issue because Jill works really hard to get us dentists. I know she does. So I just wanted to say well done to Jill and the team for doing everything they do because they're totally amazing. So
absolutely, thanks, Colin. And I think what we'll do is investigate those data lag issues, and I know Jill was looking at that to see if there's any systems we could put in place. So thank you, Colin. That's really useful.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the children's performance report? No, I don't see anybody asking with their hands up. Can we move on then to the complaints and compliments for children in care annual report? This is Tom. I believe you're presenting this.
I am indeed, yeah. In terms of Sarah's absence and also Anna's absence, so apologies for that. I don't intend to go through the report in detail, just to give you some highlights, really. So what this is obviously it's an annual report in relation to complaints that relate to our looked after children, foster carers and care leavers. We have a complaints team internally in the council who takes the role of taking on the complaints and mediating with all parties, excuse me, with all parties involved and investigating those complaints. What we try and do is take a restorative approach with people who are complaining, making sure that we're looking at what their needs are, looking at the relationships and looking how we can move forward. The complaints stage that we have has 3 stages, and I think it's really positive to say that for us we resolve the majority of our complaints either informally or at stage 1, which I think is a really good indication of how successful our restorative approach is around complaints. I think in terms of one of the things that we're trying to do a bit more of as well is our complaints team is called the complaints team, but actually it's the compliments and complaints team. So if you look at the report, there's a little bit of a section about the compliments that are being received, and I think it's important for practice that we focus on those too. So each section basically outlines the complaints and compliments for foster carers, children looked after and care leavers, and has a bit of an analysis of the complaints. I think overall we're quite happy with the process as it stands at the moment. We make sure that the learning from any complaints goes into our quality assurance panel. We have a quality assurance panel that sits across children's services, so that gets fed back in to that. And I know particularly myself, Elaine and Joanne Sanders, Service Director for Learning and Early Support, are really focused on complaints and like to see an analysis of what they're telling us about the service. So, one of the things we need to do is, make sure we've got time, excuse me, we're responding in a timely manner, making sure that we're collating and capturing more of the positive feedback, and making sure that we link the link between complaints and the feedback loop into service about what children and families are telling us. And it gives us a way of triangulating, what service is saying, what the data is saying, what we know as service directors, and actually what the experience on the ground is for our children, young people, families and foster carers. So we just thought it'd be useful to bring it into view for the board and for any questions and comments.
Yes, thank you, Tom. I mean, I think, as you say, I mean, there's always learning that we need to take on board from any complaint. But just as we do that, we also, I think, can take some learning from compliments as well. You know, what did go well, and why did it go well? Why, you know, have we solicited such a compliment? I think there's good learning from good practices as well to be had.
Absolutely.
And, John, you've got a question or comment?
Yes, both comment and compliment. Yeah, so it's obvious that we're doing some things right there. The sort of times were instance of listening, which of course that's the number one ingredient, isn't it? Is that listening aspect. So I think well done on that team, on the compliments and complaints team, that there's something right in the mix there that they're doing properly. I was just looking at page 32 and the children's looked after and care leavers complaints. So these are the people in our care who are actually making the complaints themselves rather than people complaining on their behalf. We did well in the timescales, it seems to me. We have a large proportion of the people those complaints dealt with in timescales, and I'm glad to see the reasons that were given here. They seem very reasonable issues to say, right, okay, there was a late response here, you know, due to complexity of the case, or a service manager response following a team manager response. I'm not sure what that means, but they seem as though they're legitimate reasons. What I just say about that is, could you give us some indication if there's an independent review of those complaints? Is there an annual kind of overview of those complaints, and what element of independence there is on that? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lawson. Yeah, I mean, particularly at head of service and service director level, we do an analysis of complaints, particularly where they've been delayed. And in terms of, you know, we're not close to those complaints usually, so that there's a level of independence there. The other thing that tends to happen is if they do go through the stage as Councillor Lawson, then it does go to different managers to make sure that there's a level of independence. If they're not happy with a particular response, then it can go to a service director or go to different managers. So I think it's really important that we understand the detail of the complaints, and actually that we get involved for a level of independence, but also for the learning and feedback really about service users' experience and children and young people and families' experience.
Yeah, so I think that's to my mind, that's that's striking the right balance between going completely outside the authority and actually just having some senior management look at this who are outside the team, just reflect on what's happening in the figures. So thanks for that, Tom.
No worries.
Colleen, you've got a question.
Yeah, I'm just looking, and the foster carers complaints seem to be around staying put and the finances of that and special guardianships. I know the new policy has been approved, but it hasn't been implemented yet, and it has been bounced back regarding one element of the financial element of that, as it has a massive impact on foster carers going forward doing staying put for 3 years. So I just wondered, has that been addressed yet? Is it going to be addressed? And, you know, how can we stop this? I know we've got PAs and everyone going out soon, and we're trying to do pathway plans quicker. It just worries me that, again, I know from cases and people I've talked to that it still seems to be a last minute catch up with staying put things, and then things seem to be, you know, a little bit wobbly with it. That's all.
Thanks, Colleen. I think Ophelia's probably popped on screen because I know she's dealing with the detail of that at the moment, so I'll just hand that one over to Ophelia.
Yeah, and I think it's just in terms of that clarity, I think there is still some work to be done around the staying put in relation to the timeliness, and I'm very much clear about how do we resolve the historical ones, so the ones that are in place, And I think in terms of the early implementation of the policy, it hasn't been without its challenges, but I think we're there, and there is going to be a meeting set up with yourself, Colleen, just to address and respond to the final bit. But, you know, I think we have, and I think just to be clear that we've successfully signed 3 off. I think that we'll just go from strength to strength in relation to that. And again, from my perspective, is ensuring that we maintain those conversations and that we maintain that communication. So, and again, can either do that through regular meetings or through the complaints, but wouldn't want to get that through the complaints process. So for me, it's about those early conversations, early communication, and I'm really keen in terms of the head of service to ensure timely planning. So that is the work that I'm doing around making sure that the stay put conversations take place early, and that they present at Permanence panel. So I've set some real clear timescales, what my expectations are. So it's just people raising concerns around the lack of job, the drift and delay around getting the stay put policy implemented. Is that any other?
Yeah, it's just that obviously we all know what the issues are. We've had conversations with Tom around, you know, CSA and how that impacts when you're a foster carer losing entitlements and things like that. But I suppose that's for another meeting. But it still causes concern for a lot of foster carers that are, you know, going to be wanting to do staying put. So
I mean, I think as you've previously said, the policy is good. It's robust. It's balanced, it gives, you know, and it doesn't disadvantage anyone. So again, for me, it's about that wider understanding and ensuring that there is the consistency in the implementation of the policy.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the complaints and compliments report? No? Okay, well, we'll move on then to the virtual school governing body update. I'll briefly introduce this and then ask Janet to come in as head teacher. We did meet on the 15th of December after unfortunately having to adjourn the previous meeting because we weren't quorum, but we did have a good attendance for the 15th, and we did have a good discussion around the head teacher's annual report. It never ceases to amaze me the amount of, or the numbers, I should say, of children that Janet and her team have to accommodate. I mean, 525 pupils over the last year at 220 different schools. It's the number of schools that always amazes me, because they're certainly not all within, certainly not within Kirklees. And as Janet said earlier, I mean, being able to now have, or having to have had virtual meetings with NEET, a number of school leavers that were not in education or employment or training. They've seen a bit of an increase in that, but then, as I say, it's not surprising, A, because of the monitoring isn't quite so robust as it would normally be, and B, because of the COVID situation itself. Would have disadvantaged some young people, no doubt, in leaving school. But having given that short introduction, I'll ask Janet to report, to give an update on the work of the school, the virtual school governing body.
Thank you, Councillor Pat. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I won't go through everything that we talked about at the meeting. Obviously, that's what the virtual school governing body is. It's to give the extra detailed forensic and of the information that we do present to yourselves, but to be able to go through things in more detail and to spend more time digging deeply. I'd like to just pick up on two things, really. One is around our key areas for development. There's a minimal impact on the learning of our young people. Sorry, did you just lose me then? Hello, have you got me? Yeah, something came on my screen and said,
yeah, we
connection
did
issue.
lose you. Yes.
I can see by your faces I'm back. I'll try and carry on. So really, obviously, the main focus for us is around trying to minimise the impact of COVID on the learning of all of our young. Included in that is looking at any issue where there's a school move, making sure that we're reducing the drift and delay. I mentioned already when we were talking about the data, looking at persistent absenteeism or any young person not in full-time education. The thing that will be new to you from this meeting was the forensic analysis, looking at the educational outcomes, and actually particularly a primary focus, primary age young people, and outcomes at Key Stage 2. Outcomes at Key Stage 2 for our young people have been a concern. Great detail at focusing in on reading and literacy in our Key Stage 2 PEP meetings and targets around that. Ongoing conversations around lowering the age range. We are hoping by the end of this year that we will be involved in all young people from the age of 2 to ensure that they're accessing appropriate nursery provision, and also going post-8, working with Ophelia and her team of care leavers to get more and more young people to give permission post-18 for us to remain involved, particularly where a young person is going on into further education and training. And then the other area really for me to talk to you about was around the new duty on the virtual school head teacher. So I think we have mentioned this previously, just before the end of the summer term, the government said for 2 terms, they wanted virtual school heads to have an expansion of their role. It's not statutory. Megs was written to ask if she would agree to us doing this. Where we focus on the education.
Sorry, Janet.
Currently, the
You
virtual
did
school. Prior to that,
froze then for quite a while.
Again, so yeah, so I think I was just onto the new duty. It's typical, isn't it? It's been fine all morning, and just when you're wanting me to talk, it's happening. So in terms of the new duty, virtual schools were already individually working with professionals and supporting young people in care. We had the statutory responsibility for advice and information for any young person previously looked after. So this was a new duty. Now, to deliver on this, many of you will have met Louise Hallis and Sarah Hyans, the team managers. They are acting up in an honorarium responsibility to take on some of my duties, work strategically across services to focus on this new duty. And I think I might have frozen. Am I back? Yeah. So what this is involving is working with head teachers around what schools' responsibilities are, not only for keeping these young people safe, but for working across with all professionals on focusing on educational outcomes and attainment. Also working with designated safeguarding leads in schools. I'm used to working with designated teachers, but raising awareness there. Now, I've been working with Christine Bennett and colleagues in assessment and intervention to work with social workers around what sort of questioning, what kind of prompts would help them to support and challenge for their young people in schools in the way that virtual schools do. It is an individual casework. However, I have had individual situations brought to my attention, and whilst working through those, it enables me to see where as a system maybe we can look at change to move things forward. It is likely that this duty will be extended beyond Easter, but it hasn't yet been confirmed. The key thing for us was that the work of the virtual school must be able to continue for our existing young people, and that's why we went to build capacity in the model. I don't know, other than awareness, whether anything from that needs to come back to the corporate parenting board, because I'm very conscious that your role is around children and young people in care, but thought it would be useful to give you an awareness of that. And information or a further conversation, please do get in touch. Any questions?
Any questions from anyone? No. Okay. Well, thanks, Janet, for that. I mean, this new duty is certainly interesting, and I think a good way forward, to be honest. If we are able to resource it going forward, so look forward to future reports on that. I mean, either at the virtual school governing body or here. Right, I'll move on now to Children's Ambition Board update. And Elaine, are you going to present this? And you'll have to come on screen. Thank you.
I am coming on screen. Actually, the last Ambition Board meeting was cancelled, and it will be taking place, I think, in 2 weeks' time. So we'll have a clearer update for the next meeting. I think one of the things we're proposing about the Ambition Board as well, because actually that covers now a wide range of services, and I think it'll be good to set out for the Corporate Parenting Board the themes that have been taking place in each of the Ambition Boards, and then the relevant person to come and feedback on those matters. So some of it will be about special educational needs, some of it will be about children's social care and the wide range of services, and then some will be about learning and early support. So, but we'll take a themed approach through the Corporate Parenting Board that is particularly relevant as well to children looked after. If that's agreeable.
Yeah, no, that sounds a good way forward.
Thank you.
I don't. Well, when I say I don't suppose there's any questions there to Elaine. I won't preclude any if there are any. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to almost the last item, the updates from board members on any interactions with services that they've had over the since the last meeting, I presume, or anything anybody wants to report. John.
Just not perhaps directly connected with this, but councillors on the meeting will know that at the last full council, I proposed that we look at young carers, and how young carers were claiming full benefits and the advantages that were due to them. And I think Viv and I undertook to work together on that. I've had some work, I've been doing some work with Viv in the background. Not sure where it's up to yet. We didn't know whether it was going to go to a piece of scrutiny or whether there was going to be a piece of pre-scrutiny work through officers just to try and assess the size of the work. It just seemed to me that young carers are our allies in corporate parenting, and we should be doing everything we can to support them and making sure that they're getting everything that they need and are entitled to. So that's just like I say, it's kind of connected, kind of not, but it's a piece of work that's going on in the background. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Anything else anybody wants to comment on? Elaine?
I'd just like to respond to Councillor Lawson, well, to members. If we, from my point of view, although we're around children looked after, I also have responsibility for our assessment and intervention teams. So just to assure you that actually if it is brought to our attention around a young carer through our front door, through a contact, we will undertake a full assessment to ensure, you know, that their needs are met as well and they're getting the adequate support that they require. So happy to you know, contribute to any work that's been undertaken in that area.
That's great, Elaine. I mean, the issue arose out of those young carers who are not aware of what's available. We haven't reached to tell them what's available. So it's that issue rather than what's coming through the front door. It's that issue that it's kind of pushing beyond what we're doing at the moment, beyond those boundaries. So
perhaps some comments then, thinking about, you know, the work that we've done about private fostering. So about raising that profile so people understand that, using different forums like GP surgeries, for example, in terms of raising the profile of what support's available. So yeah, more than happy to contribute to that going forward.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Elaine.
Thanks. Anything else from anybody else? not that I can see. Okay, well, thanks for that, John. So it's the last item then is the Corporate Parenting Board Agenda Plan. Jodie, is there anything, do you want to take us through this, Jodie?
Hi everyone. Yeah, it's just really for members' reference, really, if there's any items that you would like to add to that, or just anything you'd want to comment on or see on the work programme. We have only got 2 meetings left of the municipal year, so also members may want to think about what they want to look forward to in 22-23.
Yes, thank you. We've got the written report from the Samantha Sykes Foundation Trust coming to the next meeting now. That seems like quite a full agenda. Though having said all this, I'm not the chair, so I really ought to leave comments in some ways on that to Viv when she's available. But is there anything anybody, as Jodie says, is there anything anybody wants to see? John.
Chair, on the Amanda Sykes report, I just wonder if Mr. Sykes did we say he was coming to speak to us today? I wonder if he was still wanting to come to speak to us. I wonder if we should make provision for him to come and speak to us rather than just taking a written report. It's just, I don't know. I think it's valuable for that discussion to actually take place live, if you know what I mean, rather than it just offers it questions. That kind of discussion item is valuable, I think, for the organisation as well. I just thought I'd mention it. I meant to mention it earlier, but I was a little bit late off the clicky button things. Thank you.
No, that's okay. I'm not sure if that's been offered to him or not, but certainly we can look at that option. Anything else? If not, oh, sorry, Clean.
Yeah, just more reporting really on staying put and just keeping on top of that really, and how our young people are going.
Yeah.
I think it's care leavers that in society today, we just need to keep a closer eye on how they're doing and just making sure that they're in the right placement and in the right area and with the right support. And I really mean that heartily, because obviously I've got a lot of children that I've fostered over the years that keep coming back who say these things to me, so I would like that to be a forefront of what we do in fostering. See, adult going forward.
Yeah, I mean, to have that in one of the 2 meetings left for the year, I mean, seeing as it's not completely in place yet, that sounds like an idea to have that.
Yeah, going forward.
Yeah. Okay. If there is nothing else, which I can't see anybody with their hands up, can I thank you all for coming this morning, and I say, well, as I usually say, keep safe, keep well. Now's a slightly worrying time, isn't it? We're allowed out of the house, but you're not quite sure if you dare. So keep well, I say, and all the best. Thanks for coming this morning. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.